Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. After she had been sent out by her master, Aura had been at her wits' end the whole time. Her master's proposal was to play with the children in order to learn the dark elves' customs. However, doubts about that proposal had emerged in her mind. It wasn't as if children didn't know what the customs were, or that they were a people that lacked customs. She had a feeling that it would be absurd to think that she could grasp the customs of the dark elves from the things she could learn from the children. Wouldn't the things she learned from the adults be the customs of the dark elves living in this sea of trees? She felt that it was dangerous to learn from children, even though they didn't know what the correct customs were for a proper comparison. Harboring a misguided view of customs might itself be typical for children, but I wonder if that was the objective I was sent out for. In that sense, it would be more childlike. She might just be overthinking it. However, always use your head. The words she had been told by Albedo prior to their departure flashed into her head. Right now, she and Mare were the only ones serving their master. Since that was the case, as a representative of the Guardians, she should show no shame and use her head to think about all kinds of things. She grasped her golden acorn necklace, invoked its power, and addressed Mare. She then received an immediate response. Yeah, I think so too. Mare, who answered, wasn't grasping his necklace. That was because when the sender invoked it first, the activation of the item, it was a necessary action. But it wasn't necessary for the receiver to do so, even to continue the conversation. If that's how it is, then there's probably some objective beyond us just playing together to learn their customs after all. Just what on earth do you think it could be? Since Sama said the word friendly when he came to this village, could it be a part of that? Because us playing with the children will become or appeal to the idea that we're friendly. That might also be part of it, but maybe we're going to take in the children. Would. If that's what it is, wouldn't it be better to win over the adults? I thought they were just a nuisance, but there were guys who looked like they could easily be won over. They were starting to understand the meaning behind them playing with the children less and less. If that's the case, I wonder then if Sama is thinking about using the children to do something. Aura said to Mare as she stared at the backs of the 6 children walking in front of them. They were weak, fragile beings, and they weren't of high social status either. It was a mystery where their utility value lie. What kind of use do they have? Hostages. I can't completely deny that possibility, but I don't really think that's it. Children. Using children to gather information. But I wonder just what information would children know? That's right, isn't it? It was a little difficult to imagine that information only the children held would be important. Or could it be that he also wanted the children's information, because it had already been analyzed from multiple angles? I mean, come on, isn't all you've been doing is just shooting down of all my ideas? Don't you have any guesses that would make you go, this is it? Or something? After a short time had passed, Mare's voice once again echoed in her head. Oh, could you be thinking of taking these children to Urantal? I see. That might be it, but if that's the case, wouldn't it be better to take the adults after all? Children who don't really know much about things are easier to win over, or something. Maybe he's thinking of taking not just the children, but everyone in the village. Is it? But if the target is the all dark elves in the village, I don't think he would tell us to play with the children to get closer to them. If it were just as Mare had said, they would be working to win over the adults, too. It might be different if the opinions of the children carried a lot of weight. But in the 3 days that Aura had stayed in the village, she hadn't caught sight of any indication of that at all. However much she thought about it, she couldn't believe that the children had any special value. Then, I wonder if it really is just to cultivate friendly relations and gather information from the children after all. I guess that's all it is. But when you think about it, it certainly might be just that. I mean, it's frustrating, but nothing else comes to mind except that. Well, adults might be tight-lipped, but because they're children, they would just let information slip out. Yeah. If I was Sama, who really valued information, that would be an idea I would have. Then we have to bring up all sorts of subjects, don't we? Do your best, sis. Good luck to you, too. If it's just the 2 of us, we can speak normally, so we have to practice, That's only because we're using the necklace. The children walking in front of them stopped. In a corner of the village, there was no playground equipment to be found, nor did it appear that there was anything in particular there at all. Of course, Aura knew that sort of equipment wasn't anywhere in the village from her usual walks around it. No, Aura recognized that her own ideas were wrong. It was entirely possible that one of the children here could use magic to produce playground equipment. In her sensory range as a ranger, she detected that an adult was watching them. One person. Oh, it's that guy. He's watching me again. Who is he? Don't look at him. The best ranger in this village is at our 10 o'clock. That guy, ever since I came to this village, he'd be looking at me sometimes, right? But he wouldn't come near me. Like maybe they're feeling suspicious, but because they don't have any concrete evidence, they're keeping you under surveillance. Something like that. Something like that. Be careful not to do anything that would make them suspicious of you too, Mayor. We have to inform Ain-sama about this later. Ora tried to ignore the man. He probably thought that an excellent ranger like himself wouldn't be noticed. Or maybe his objective was to let himself be noticed. Perhaps he intended to silently keep them in check by letting them know that I'm keeping my eye on you. It was annoying, but she couldn't kill him. If she were to kill him, it would be with the permission of her master, and she would have to create a set of circumstances where it looked like he had been killed by the Inkilursus or some other magical beast. She would then have to come up with a simple alibi. Well, it could be easily done if you were Ora the Beast Tamer. So what are we doing in a place like this? Okay, let's play house. The biggest boy said in a loud voice. It was like he was trying to get them to agree through the sheer energy with which he said it. Playhouse. Of course, Ora knew what kind of game that was. It's a type of role-playing, right? If I remember correctly. Yukubika Chigama-sama regretted it when Parorensino-sama said that, I want to be the baby, and have mommy rub my head and tell me everything's going to be okay. Is that what we're going to do? Ora pictured herself rubbing Shaltier's head and saying there, you'll be okay. Ah, so something like that. But will I be doing that, or will I be the one it's being done to? It would still be fine if she had to take on the mommy role, but having the role of the baby was embarrassing. Or rather than it being just roleplay, wouldn't it be an insult to Yukubika Chigama-sama if she, who had been created as a floor guardian by the supreme beings, were to play the role of a baby? Though Yamako-sama and Enkora Makimachi-sama did laugh when they heard about Parorensino-sama's actions, Yukubika Chigama-sama might get angry with me. It was simple enough to say she didn't want to play that game. However, in order to gather information and to also loosen their lips, it might be necessary for her to agree to it. Everyone was the same in this regard. Plus, those who played the same games together could usually become friends. On the other hand, what would happen if she said she didn't want to play that game? If that were the case, Ora didn't have the confidence that she could make a good suggestion if she were asked what game they were going to play then. Ora could suggest a few games to play. For example, foot races, tree climbing, sword fighting, and so on. However, those kinds of games were clearly decided by differences in how good you were at playing them and more. Also, there shouldn't be any child who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ora and Mare, especially Mare in terms of pure physical abilities. If that were the case, there would be boring games that had a foregone conclusion. In order to cheer them up, they could just let themselves barely lose. But it was common knowledge that Ora was supposed to have had driven away the Inkilursus Lord. If a person as strong as that started saying, oh no, I lost in a foot race or something, then even a child should realize that she was losing just to butter them up. If their relationship could be deepened though, something like that, then those children would have to be people of great character. So, if you were to ask her if there was an option of not playing, that would be impossible. Because her absolute master had told her to go play. If that were the case, sis, could it be? Mare had a startled expression on his face. He probably remembered the same things as she did and arrived at the same conclusion. Ora used all the strength in her body to give the frightened Mare her best smile. So this really has been an extremely high-level mission, Mare. Having sent out Ora and Mare to play, and after he had finished putting their things away, Ains leaned against the wall, idly looking up at the ceiling, while occasionally glancing at the small memo pad in his hand. He had nothing to do. Since they didn't have that much luggage to begin with, it didn't take long to tidy up everything. He just had to consult with those two on how to coordinate the interior when they got back. He had thought that someone would come to see him right away, but all things considered, no one had come yet. Ains dropped his gaze to the memo pad in his hand. What was written on it were the possible situations that could occur after they had come to the village and how to deal with them. However, no one coming to see him was not something that he could have ever imagined happening. He had to acknowledge that holes had suddenly appeared in the scenarios he had thought up. It wasn't a shock to him, because he was just an ordinary person after all, so he thought that was just the extent of his ability to plan ahead. What was important was how he was going to recover from this. There were two main paths that he immediately thought of. One was to be calm and compassed while staying in place, the other one was to take action of his own accord. Ains chose the former. He chose the path where he could avoid passing them by mistake. For a short while, Ains didn't do anything at all. Around the time he started, worriedly thinking that maybe he had chosen the wrong path after all, a single, dark elf woman finally came and rudely peeked her head into the room from the entrance. People in this village were usually close enough to do this. When she finally made eye contact with Ains, she acted a little surprised. Ains felt a little uncomfortable there. Would Ains's presence there really be that surprising? No, is this sort of reaction appropriate if you were to look into a person's house though? We're just borrowing it and make eye contact with the person inside. Though, considering the sense of distance and the interpersonal relationships of dark elves, I have a hunch this is a little different. As if she were greeting Ains, the woman bowed her head once, turned her gaze to the floor, entered the room, and placed the dish she had brought with her on the floor. The dark elves wore shoes even when inside the elf trees. Because of that, he had some personal reservations about the tray of food being placed on the floor. That said, given that the dark elves sat on the floor when they ate, as far as Ains had seen, less than half of the people here use a table, this might have been the natural thing to do. And there was a point he was more concerned with than that.